I should have known something was wrong when he didn't answer my calls. It was Valentine's Day, our third together, and I'd spent the entire morning preparing. I'd woken up early, my excitement making sleep impossible after 5 a.m. I arranged for his favorite pastries to be delivered to his apartment. I spent an hour carefully wrapping the vintage watch I'd saved 3 months to buy him. I even wore the red dress he loved, the one that made me feel both beautiful and slightly self-conscious at how it hugged my curves. But as the minutes of silence stretched into hours, the flutter of anticipation in my stomach hardened into a cold, heavy weight. "He's just busy," I whispered to myself as I paced my apartment. Maybe a work emergency. By noon, I'd called him 6 times. Each call rang through to voicemail, each text message displayed as delivered but unread. James had never been good about responding promptly, but on Valentine's Day, the day he'd promised to take me to the restaurant we'd been trying to get reservations at for months, something was wrong. I tried to distract myself. I cleaned my already spotless apartment. I reorganized my bookshelf alphabetically, then by color. I painted my nails a deep crimson that matched my dress, then removed the polish because my shaking hands had made a mess of it. At 2 p.m., I called his best friend, Mike. "Hey, Emma." Mike's voice sounded strange, pitched slightly higher than normal. "What's up? Have you heard from James today?" "He's not answering his phone." The pause lasted 2 seconds too long. "No, haven't talked to him. Probably just caught up with work stuff, you know how he gets." Mike's words tumbled out too quickly, like he was trying to push them away from himself. "Mike." My voice was steady now, the uncertainty crystallizing into something harder. "What aren't you telling me?" Another pause. "It's not my place, Emma." "Mike, please." I hated the pleading in my voice, hated how small I suddenly felt. "I just need to know he's okay." I heard Mike's heavy sigh through the phone. "He's fine. Physically fine. Look, I think you should talk to him." "I've been trying to talk to him all day," I snapped. "That's the whole point of this call." "Emma," Mike's voice softened. "I saw something on Instagram this morning. Rebecca Sullivan posted a story. James was in it." Rebecca Sullivan, James's co-worker, the one he'd always insisted was just a friend. Despite how she looked at him during the office Christmas party, despite the late-night texts I'd occasionally glimpsed on his phone, what was the story? I asked, although I already knew. Some part of me had known since the first unanswered call this morning. They were at that new resort in the Catskills. The fancy one with the private hot tubs. Mike's voice was gentle now, careful. "I'm sorry, Emma." The room tilted slightly. I sat down on the edge of my couch, the stiff fabric of my red dress crumpling underneath me. "I see," I said, surprised by how calm I sounded. "Thank you for telling me." "Emma, are you—" I hung up before he could finish the question. Was I okay? What a ridiculous thing to ask. My fingers moved automatically, opening Instagram, searching for Rebecca Sullivan. Her profile was public. Her story was still up. There they were. James and Rebecca in a steaming hot tub, champagne flutes lifted toward the camera, James's arm around her shoulders. His face turned toward hers with an expression I recognized, the soft, slightly dopey smile he used to direct at me. The caption read, "Best Valentine's surprise ever." My phone slipped from my fingers, bouncing on the carpet. I stared at the blank wall opposite my couch, seeing nothing. 3 years. 3 years of building a life together. 3 years of me supporting his career moves, of planning our future, of meeting his family, and folding myself into the shape of someone they would approve of. 3 years of me believing I was special to him. I'm not sure how long I sat there staring at nothing. The light in my apartment shifted as the afternoon slid toward evening. My carefully applied makeup felt heavy and ridiculous on my face. The dress that had made me feel beautiful hours ago now seemed like a costume, something a child would wear while playing pretend. When my phone rang, I jumped. James's name flashed on the screen. My heart lurched painfully in my chest. I answered but said nothing. "Emma?" His voice, familiar and suddenly strange. "Emma, are you there?" "I'm here." My voice sounded hollow, distant. "Hey, babe. I'm so sorry about today. There was an emergency at work, and I've been stuck in meetings all day. My phone died, and I only just got a chance to charge it." The lie flowed so easily from him. Not a hint of hesitation or guilt colored his voice. Had it always been this easy for him to lie to me? "An emergency," I repeated flatly. "Yeah, you know how it gets. But I'm free now. I know I missed our lunch reservation, but I can come over. We can still salvage Valentine's Day." A small, hysterical laugh escaped me. "Salvage it." "Emma? Are you okay? How's the hot tub, James?" The words felt like glass in my throat. Silence. 1 second. 2. 3. What? The hot tub. At the resort in the Catskills. Is it as nice as it looked in Rebecca's Instagram story? More silence. I could almost see him scrambling, recalculating, trying to find a way to twist this into something explainable. Emma, I can explain. Don't bother. I cut him off, surprised by the steel in my voice. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear anything from you ever again. It's not what you think. It's exactly what I think. You're in the Catskills with Rebecca on Valentine's Day, while I've been sitting here in this stupid red dress waiting for you. Do you know what that makes you, James? It makes you a cheater and a liar. Emma, please, just let me. We're done. I felt nothing as I said the words. The pain would come later, I knew. But in this moment, there was only a vast, echoing emptiness. Don't call me again. Don't text me. Don't show up at my apartment. We're finished. I hung up before he could respond. I set my phone down carefully on the coffee table, stood up, and walked to my bedroom with measured steps. I unzipped the red dress and let it fall to the floor. I stepped into the shower and turned the water as hot as I could stand it. Only then, with the water's roar drowning out any sound I might make, did I allow myself to break. I cried until the water ran cold, until my skin was wrinkled and my throat was raw. I cried for the future I'd thought we would have, for the love I'd believed was real, for the years I'd wasted on someone who could discard me so easily. When I finally emerged from the shower, shivering and spent, my phone was lighting up with notifications. Messages and missed calls from James. A text from Mike asking if I was okay. I ignored them all, crawling into bed and pulling the covers over my head. Sleep came somehow, dragging me under into fitful dreams where I was always searching for someone who was always just out of reach. Morning arrived with the dull persistence of reality. My eyes felt swollen, my body heavy. For a blissful moment upon waking, I forgot, and then the memory of yesterday crashed back over me like a wave, leaving me gasping. I reached for my phone out of habit. 23 missed calls from James, 47 text messages. Emma, please let me explain. It's not what it looks like. Rebecca means nothing to me. Please answer your phone. I made a mistake. I love you. The last one made me laugh, a harsh, ugly sound in my quiet bedroom. Love. He didn't know the meaning of the word. I deleted the messages without reading the rest. I blocked his number. I did the same on every social media platform. I erased him from my digital life with a few taps of my finger. If only erasing him from my heart could be so simple. The next few days passed in a blur of tissues and ice cream and the sympathetic faces of friends who came to check on me. I called in sick to work. I let my phone die and didn't bother charging it. I moved from my bed to my couch and back again, existing rather than living. On the 4th day after Valentine's Day, someone knocked on my apartment door. My heart seized with panic. James? But when I peered through the peephole, it was my best friend Lily standing in the hallway, arms crossed. Open up, she called through the door. I know you're in there. I unlocked the door and stepped back to let her in. Lily took one look at me, unwashed hair, baggy sweatpants, the empty ice cream cartons littering my coffee table, and sighed. Okay, enough of this. She strode into my apartment like a force of nature, throwing open curtains and collecting dirty dishes. You're taking a shower, putting on real clothes, and then we're going to get some fresh air and actual food that didn't come from a delivery app. I don't want to, I mumbled, but I was already being steered toward the bathroom. I didn't ask what you wanted, Lily said, her voice gentler than her words. I'm telling you what you need. An hour later, showered and dressed in clean jeans and a sweater, I sat across from Lily at a small cafe 3 blocks from my apartment. The simple act of being outside, of feeling the February chill on my cheeks, and hearing the bustle of people around me, felt both foreign and grounding. He keeps trying to contact me through other people, I told Lily, staring into my untouched coffee. He showed up at Mike's apartment asking for my new number. He sent flowers to my office. What a jackass, Lily muttered, stirring her tea with unnecessary force. You know what you should do? What? You should take all the money you were saving for your anniversary trip with him and go somewhere amazing. By yourself? Or with me, I'm not picky. She grinned, trying to coax a smile from me. I blinked, suddenly remembering. The trip. For the past year, James and I had been saving for a trip to the Bahamas to celebrate our upcoming anniversary in June. We had a joint savings account specifically for it. I'd been putting in money from every paycheck. The trip fund, I said slowly. Yeah, screw him. That money is half yours anyway. Use it to start your post-James life. I nodded absently, but my mind was already racing ahead. The trip fund held over $15,000. James had insisted on creating a joint account for it, claiming it would help us both feel invested in the plan. I'd thought it was sweet at the time, this symbol of our shared future. Now all I could think about was how easily he'd thrown that future away. How casually he'd betrayed me, while the evidence of our supposed commitment quietly accumulated in that account. "You're right," I said finally, looking up at Lily. "That money is half mine." "That's the spirit. Where do you want to go instead of the Bahamas?" A thought was taking shape in my mind, rough and unformed but irresistible. "Actually," I said slowly, "I'm thinking maybe I still want to go to the Bahamas." Lily raised an eyebrow. "Won't that just remind you of him?" I took a sip of my coffee, feeling the first stirring of something other than grief in days. It was a small, cold flame of purpose. "Not necessarily," I said. "Not if I do it right." That night I couldn't sleep. The idea that had sparked during my conversation with Lily had grown, consuming my thoughts. It was petty. It was possibly unethical. It was definitely not what a mature, well-adjusted person would do in my situation. But the thought of it sent a thrill through me that cut through the fog of misery that had enveloped me since Valentine's Day. I opened my laptop and began to research. The joint savings account. The trip we'd been planning. The resort in the Bahamas that James had been so excited about, with its private beachfront villas and exclusive amenities. By morning, I had a plan. The first step was simple. I needed to make James believe that I was willing to forgive him. I unblocked his number. Within an hour, as if he'd been waiting for exactly this moment, a text came through. "Emma, thank you for unblocking me. Can we please talk?" I stared at the message, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. I thought of him in that hot tub with Rebecca, champagne in hand, while I sat waiting in my red dress. I thought of the easy lies he'd told me on the phone. 3 years of my life devoted to someone who could throw it all away for a weekend fling. "I need time," I typed back. "But yes, eventually we should talk." His response was immediate. "Thank you. That's all I'm asking for. I made a terrible mistake, but what we have is worth fighting for. I love you, Emma." The words made my stomach turn, but I forced myself to respond. "I need space right now. Please respect that." "Of course. Whatever you need. I'm here when you're ready." I set my phone down, feeling slightly dirty. But also, underneath that, a flutter of dark satisfaction. He'd taken the bait. For the next week, I maintained a careful distance. I responded to his increasingly frequent texts with non-committal replies. When he asked to see me, I deflected, saying I wasn't ready yet. All the while I watched as he grew more confident, more certain that he could win me back. "He keeps telling people that we're working things out," Lily reported after running into a mutual friend. "He's saying it was a one-time mistake and that you're giving him another chance." "Perfect," I said, and Lily gave me a strange look. "Perfect? Emma, do you actually want to get back together with him?" I shook my head. "No, but I need him to think I might." "Why? What are you planning?" I told her the outline of my plan. As I spoke, her expression shifted from confusion to disbelief to a slow, spreading grin. "That's evil," she said when I finished. "I love it." 10 days after Valentine's Day, I finally agreed to meet James for coffee. I chose a public place where we'd be unlikely to make a scene. I arrived early, selecting a table in the corner where I could see him enter. When he walked through the door, my heart gave a treacherous lurch. He looked good, he always did, but there was something different about him. A cautious hope in his eyes as he scanned the cafe and found me. A vulnerability in the set of his shoulders as he approached. I reminded myself that he was a skilled liar. That the sincerity on his face now was the same sincerity he'd projected for 3 years, while apparently feeling free to pursue other women. "Emma," he said, sliding into the seat across from me. "Thank you for meeting me." I nodded, not trusting myself to speak just yet. Up close, the sight of him was more disorienting than I'd expected. The familiar lines of his face, the way his hair fell across his forehead, the cologne that I could just detect beneath the coffee shop smells, it all sent a confusing mix of comfort and revulsion through me. "I know I hurt you," he began, leaning forward. "What I did was unforgivable, but I'm hoping that somehow you can find it in your heart to forgive me anyway." I looked at him, really looked at him, searching for any sign that this was just another performance. But all I could see was earnestness, regret, hope. "Why did you do it?" I asked, the question that had been burning inside me for days. James looked down at his hands. "I don't have a good answer for that. Rebecca and I have been friends for a long time. She'd been going through a rough patch and I was trying to be supportive. Then she suggested this Valentine's Day trip as friends, and I don't know." I told myself it wasn't romantic, that I was just being a good friend. But I knew it wasn't right. I knew I was crossing a line. So you lied to me. You planned this trip with her while making Valentine's Day plans with me. He nodded, shame coloring his features. Yes. I'm so sorry, Emma. It was selfish and cruel. You deserve better. What about Rebecca now? Are you still seeing her? No, he said quickly. God, no. I told her immediately after you found out that it was a mistake. That my heart belongs to you. It always has. I took a sip of my coffee, using the moment to collect myself. The rawness of betrayal was still there, but alongside it now was something colder, more calculated. I don't know if I can trust you again, I said, which was the absolute truth. I understand that, James replied, reaching across the table. After a moment's hesitation, I allowed him to take my hand. His touch sent an unpleasant shiver through me that I forced myself to conceal. I know I have to earn back your trust. I'm willing to do whatever it takes, Emma. Whatever you need from me. I pulled my hand away gently. I need time, James. This isn't something I can just get over immediately. Of course, he nodded eagerly. Take all the time you need. I'll wait. I glanced down at my watch. I should go. I have plans with Lily. Can I call you tomorrow? I hesitated, then nodded. Yes. We can talk more then. As I stood to leave, James caught my wrist. Emma, I mean it. I love you. What we have is special. I was an idiot to risk losing it, and I swear I'll never make that mistake again. I looked down at him, at the pleading in his eyes, and forced a small smile. I'll talk to you tomorrow, James. Outside the cafe, I took a deep breath of the cold air, feeling like I'd just escaped something dangerous. But also feeling the first real flicker of power I'd experienced since seeing that Instagram story. He was desperate to win me back. He would do anything, and I was going to use that. When James called the next day, I let him talk for nearly an hour. He told me again how sorry he was, how much he loved me, how he would never hurt me again. I listened, making the appropriate responses, neither committing to reconciliation nor shutting the door on the possibility. There's something I want to ask you, I said when he finally wound down. The trip fund. Our Bahamas vacation. What about it? He asked, sounding cautious. I've been thinking about it. We've both put a lot of money into that account. If we're going to try to move past this, I don't want to lose that. Of course not, James said quickly. That trip is still happening. If you want it to, I'm not sure yet, I said, injecting uncertainty into my voice. It was supposed to be a celebration of us, of our relationship. That feels different now. It could be a new beginning, he suggested, hope evident in his voice. A fresh start for us. Maybe, I said. Can I think about it? Take all the time you need, Emma. The money's there waiting. It's our future. Our future. The words rang hollow now, but I let him believe I was moved by them. Over the next 2 weeks, I played my part carefully. I met James for coffee again, then for dinner. I allowed him to hold my hand as we walked through the park. I let him kiss me goodnight once, pulling away before it could deepen, citing my continuing uncertainty. All the while, I was putting my plan into motion. First, I spoke with my boss about taking time off work. 2 weeks in June, the exact dates James and I had planned for our Bahamas trip. Of course, Janet said, making a note in her calendar. You and James finally taking that anniversary vacation you've been saving for? I smiled, not bothering to correct her assumption. Something like that. Next, I consulted with a lawyer friend about the legalities of joint bank accounts. The news was both good and bad. Since both our names were on the account, legally either of us could withdraw funds without the other's permission. However, taking the entire amount could potentially be seen as theft if James chose to make an issue of it. But if I only take half? I asked. That's your money, my friend confirmed. He'd have no recourse. That evening, I called James. I've been thinking about the trip, I said without preamble. Yeah? His voice was eager. What about it? I think we should still go. Really? The relief in his voice was palpable. Emma, that's great. I promise I'll make it the most amazing vacation. It'll be a chance for us to reconnect, to rebuild. That's what I'm hoping, I lied. But James, I need you to do something for me first. Anything, he said immediately. Name it. I want you to book everything. The flights, the resort, all of it. I know we were planning to do it together, but I need to see that you're really committed to this. To us. There was a pause, and for a moment I worried I'd overplayed my hand. Then, of course, I'd be happy to take care of all that. Consider it done. Thank you, I said softly. It means a lot to me. After we hung up, I sat in the silence of my apartment, a cold sense of satisfaction settling over me. Phase 1 complete. The next day, I went to the bank and withdrew $7,500 from our joint account, exactly half of the money we'd saved. I transferred it to my personal account, where James had no access. Then I waited. The call came that evening. "Emma, did you withdraw money from the trip fund?" James's voice was careful, controlled, but I could hear the tension underneath. "Yes," I said simply. "Half of it." "Why? I thought we were going to use that for the Bahamas." "We are," I assured him. "I just feel more comfortable having my half under my control right now. I hope you understand." A pause. I could almost hear him weighing his options, trying to decide if this was worth fighting about when he was still in the process of winning me back. "I understand," he said finally. "It's your money too. Whatever makes you comfortable. Thank you for understanding." I let warmth seep into my voice. "Did you make the bookings yet?" "I'm working on it," he said. "The resort had a cancellation, so we got lucky. I should have everything finalized by tomorrow." "I can't wait," I said, and that at least was the truth. 3 days later, James asked me to come over to his apartment. "I have something to show you," he said, a hint of excitement in his voice. I agreed, steeling myself for the first visit to his place since the breakup. As I rode the elevator up to his floor, I reminded myself why I was doing this. The image of him and Rebecca in that hot tub played in my mind on repeat, hardening my resolve. James opened the door with a smile that faltered slightly when I didn't immediately step into his arms. We were still navigating this strange space, not quite together, not fully apart. He led me to his dining table where his laptop was open. "I want to show you what I've booked," he said, pulling out a chair for me. I sat down, and he settled beside me, close enough that our shoulders almost touched. He pulled up a browser window showing the reservation details for the Royal Bahamian Resort. "One beachfront villa," he said, scrolling through the images. "Private plunge pool, daily breakfast delivered to our door, couples massage included in the package." The villa was beautiful, exactly what we'd been dreaming of when we started saving. White sand beaches visible from a private patio, a massive bed draped in white linens, an outdoor shower enclosed by tropical foliage. "It's perfect," I said and meant it. "I upgraded a few things," James admitted, a tinge of pride in his voice. "The standard package didn't include the plunge pool or the spa treatments. I added those. And I got us the sunset cruise for one evening." I raised an eyebrow. "That must have been expensive." He shrugged. "I wanted to make it special. After everything, you deserve the best, Emma." For a brief moment, I felt a twinge of doubt about my plan. Then I remembered the casual cruelty of his betrayal, the ease with which he'd lied to me, and the doubt evaporated. "Thank you," I said, leaning over to kiss his cheek. "It looks amazing," James beamed. "I also booked our flights. Direct from JFK, leaving June 15th and returning June 29th. I got us the upgraded seats with extra legroom." "You've thought of everything," I murmured, scanning the confirmation emails he was showing me. "How much did all this cost?" "Don't worry about that," he said, closing the laptop. "Consider it part of my apology." I nodded, not pushing the point. Based on what I could see, he'd spent at least $10,000, probably more with the upgrades. The remaining money from the trip fund plus a significant amount from his own pocket. Perfect. As the weeks passed, I continued my careful dance with James. I allowed our relationship to appear as though it was healing. We went to dinner. We watched movies curled up on his couch. I even stayed the night once, though I made excuses to avoid intimacy beyond kissing. "I'm just not ready yet," I told him, and he nodded with understanding that seemed genuine. "I'll wait until you are," he promised. "There's no rush, Emma." All the while, I was making my own preparations. I researched extensively. I made bookings using my personal email account. I bought new clothes, a new suitcase, a new swimsuit, things James would never see. May slipped into June. The trip was approaching fast. James grew more excited with each passing day, talking constantly about the activities he'd planned for us in the Bahamas. I smiled and nodded and contributed ideas of my own, all while counting down the days in my head. 1 week before our scheduled departure, I invited James to my apartment for dinner. I cooked his favorite meal, steak with roasted potatoes and asparagus. I opened an expensive bottle of wine. I wore a dress I knew he loved, navy blue with a scoop neck that showed just enough skin to keep his eyes wandering. "What's the occasion?" he asked as I poured him a second glass of wine. I smiled. "Do I need an occasion to make dinner for my boyfriend?" His face lit up. It was the first time since Valentine's Day that I'd referred to him as my boyfriend. The word felt like ash in my mouth, but the effect on him was exactly what I'd hoped for. "No," he said, reaching across the table to take my hand. "But I'll treasure it anyway." After dinner, we moved to the couch. The wine had left a pleasant warmth in my veins, making it easier to allow James to pull me close, to let his hands wander along my sides. "I've missed you," he murmured against my neck. "Every day I've missed you like this." I wondered if he'd said similar things to Rebecca in that hot tub, if he'd held her the same way, made her feel special in the same practiced manner. "I've been thinking," I said, pulling back slightly to look at him. "About us. About the trip." "What about it?" His fingers traced patterns on my bare arm. "I think I'm ready to try again. Properly. I want the Bahamas trip to be a fresh start for us." The happiness that spread across his face would have been touching if I hadn't known how easily his affections could shift. "Emma, that's all I've wanted to hear." "I know." I leaned forward and kissed him, for the first time since Valentine's Day, allowing it to deepen into something more passionate. I felt nothing. No spark, no desire, only a clinical awareness of what I was doing, but James responded immediately, pulling me closer. When I finally pulled away, his pupils were dilated, his breathing uneven. "Stay tonight," he whispered. I shook my head, smiling apologetically. "Not yet. Soon, but I want the trip to be special." "A real reunion?" Disappointment flickered across his face, but he nodded. "Whatever you want, Emma. I can wait. Just one more week," I promised, trailing my fingers down his chest. "And then we'll have 2 whole weeks together in paradise." After James left that night, I sat alone in my apartment, staring at the half-empty wine bottle on my coffee table. There was no turning back now. In 7 days, I would execute the final phase of my plan. In 7 days, I would have my revenge. The week passed in a blur of last-minute preparations and nervous anticipation. James texted constantly, his excitement growing as the departure date approached. He sent me links to articles about the best beaches in the Bahamas, reminded me to pack sunscreen, asked what books I was bringing for beach reading. I responded with equal enthusiasm, playing my part to perfection. I mentioned clothing I was packing that I had no intention of bringing. I asked questions about the resort that I already knew the answers to from my own research. I maintained the illusion of shared anticipation. The night before our scheduled departure, James came over to help me finish packing. He'd already packed his own suitcase, which sat in my living room ready for our early morning trip to the airport. "Do you need help with anything else?" he asked, watching as I zipped up my suitcase. "I think I'm all set," I said, straightening up. "Our flight's at 9 a.m., so we should leave here by 6 just to be safe with traffic." "I've already booked the Uber," James said. "It'll be here at 5:45. "Perfect." I smiled at him. "Do you want to stay tonight? It might be easier than you going back to your place just to come back so early." His face lit up. "I'd like that." We spent the evening watching a movie, James's arm around my shoulders, my head resting against his chest in a pose of domestic contentment that felt increasingly surreal as the hours ticked by. By the time we went to bed, my nerves were stretched tight with anticipation. "I can't wait for tomorrow," James murmured as we lay in the darkness, his body curved around mine. "Neither can I," I whispered back. "It's going to be unforgettable." I waited until his breathing had deepened into the familiar rhythm of sleep before carefully extracting myself from his arms. I moved silently around the darkened apartment, checking and rechecking the preparations I'd made earlier in the day. My real suitcase, packed with everything I would actually need for my trip, was hidden in the back of my closet. The suitcase James had helped me pack contained old clothes I no longer wanted, books I'd already read, toiletries I could afford to leave behind. I checked my phone, 2:17 a.m. My alarm was set for 4:30, giving me plenty of time before the Uber James had booked would arrive. I slipped back into bed, not touching him, and stared at the ceiling until sleep finally claimed me. The alarm woke me with a jolt. I silenced it quickly, glancing over at James, who stirred but didn't wake. Years of living together had taught me that he was a heavy sleeper, especially in the early morning hours. I slipped out of bed and padded to the bathroom. I took a quick shower, got dressed, and applied minimal makeup. Then I retrieved my real suitcase from the closet, moving with exaggerated care to avoid making noise. I left an envelope on the kitchen counter, my name written on the front in my own handwriting. At 5:15, I called my own Uber. As I waited by the door, suitcase in hand, I looked back at my darkened apartment. James still slept peacefully in my bed, unaware that in 30 minutes the Uber he'd booked would arrive to find me gone. My phone buzzed with a notification. Uber arriving in 2 minutes. I picked up my suitcase and quietly opened the front door. The hallway was deserted at this early hour. I pulled the door shut behind me with a soft click, then used my key to lock it from the outside. The Uber was waiting when I reached the street. The driver loaded my suitcase into the trunk while I settled into the back seat. JFK Airport, I confirmed. You got it, the driver replied, pulling away from the curb. As we drove through the still dark streets of New York, I felt a strange mixture of emotions: anxiety, guilt, and underneath it all, a cold, hard satisfaction. By the time James woke up and realized what was happening, it would be too late. At 5:45 precisely, as my Uber pulled up to the airport departure terminal, I imagined the scene back at my apartment, James's phone chiming with the arrival notification. James waking, confused to find the bed empty. James calling my name, searching the apartment, finding only the envelope I'd left. Inside that envelope was a handwritten note. James, by the time you read this, I'll be gone. Not just from the apartment, but from your life. I've tried to forgive your betrayal, but the truth is, I can't. Every time I look at you, I see you with her on Valentine's Day. Every time you touch me, I wonder who else you've touched with those same hands, spoken those same words to. The trip to the Bahamas was supposed to be our dream vacation. Now it's just yours. Enjoy the beachfront villa, the private pool, the couple's massage, though you'll have to get that one alone. Consider it my parting gift. A very expensive reminder of what you threw away. Don't try to contact me again. By the time you read this, I'll have blocked your number, your email, your social media. Any attempt to reach me will be futile. Goodbye, James. I hope it was worth it. Emma. At the airport, I checked in for my flight, not to the Bahamas, but to Bali. A solo trip I'd booked using the $7,500 I'd withdrawn from our joint account, plus some of my own savings. A complete reset, far from New York, far from James, far from the mess of betrayal and calculated revenge. As I settled into the international terminal to wait for my flight, I switched my phone to airplane mode. James would be discovering my absence right about now. He'd be reading the note, realizing that not only was I gone, but that he was now stuck with a $10,000 plus non-refundable vacation package for two that he would have to enjoy alone. Or not enjoy, more likely. I thought about what would happen next. James, frantically trying to call me, finding my number blocked. James, perhaps rushing to the airport in a futile attempt to stop me, not knowing I was departing from an entirely different terminal for an entirely different destination. James, calling the resort to see if they would refund his money. They wouldn't. I'd checked the cancellation policy carefully. A small, vicious part of me hoped he would still go. That he would spend 2 weeks alone in a romantic beachfront villa, surrounded by happy couples, eating breakfast for two delivered to his door each morning, showing up solo for the sunset cruise filled with honeymooners and anniversary celebrations. My flight was called for boarding. I stood, gathering my carry-on bag, and walked toward the gate. With each step, I felt lighter, as if I were shedding layers of hurt and betrayal. James had cheated on me on Valentine's Day, callously discarding 3 years of love and trust for a weekend fling. Now I had orchestrated my own disappearing act, leaving him with nothing but a very expensive lesson on the true cost of infidelity. As the plane lifted off, carrying me toward a new chapter of my life, I opened the window shade to watch New York recede beneath me. Somewhere down there, James was realizing that he hadn't just lost me on Valentine's Day. He'd lost me, $15,000 and 2 weeks of his life. And for the first time since seeing that Instagram story, I smiled a genuine smile. The Bali air hit me like a warm, fragrant blanket as I stepped off the plane. Humid, heavy with unfamiliar floral scents, it was as far from New York's early June crispness as I could get. Exactly what I wanted. A place where nothing would remind me of James. I collected my suitcase and navigated through the busy airport, past smiling locals holding signs for various resorts and families reuniting in joyful clusters. For a moment, the reality of my situation washed over me. I was alone, on the other side of the world, running from heartbreak with nothing but a hastily planned revenge scheme behind me. What the hell was I doing? Taxi, miss? A cheerful man gestured toward the exit. Yes, thank you, I replied, pushing down the sudden flutter of panic. This was no time for second thoughts. I'd made my choice when I'd left James sleeping in my apartment while I boarded a plane to a destination he knew nothing about. My phone remained in airplane mode as the taxi wound through traffic-clogged streets toward Ubud, the cultural heart of Bali, where I'd booked a small villa for the first week of my stay. I wasn't ready to face the inevitable barrage of messages from James, the confused texts from friends wondering why I'd disappeared. Not yet. The drive took nearly 2 hours, the scenery gradually shifting from crowded urban sprawl to lush greenery. Rice terraces cascaded down hillsides in geometric precision. Temple entrances appeared around corners, stone guardians draped in black and white checked cloth standing sentinel. It was beautiful in a way that demanded presence. My exhausted mind couldn't help but engage with the newness of it all. "First time in Bali?" the driver asked, catching my wide-eyed gaze in the rearview mirror. "Yes. First time in Asia, actually." "Ah, you come alone? No boyfriend?" He asked it casually, the way taxi drivers everywhere make conversation. The question shouldn't have stung, but it did. "No boyfriend," I confirmed, looking out the window. "Just me." Good, he said, surprising me. "Bali is healing place. Many come after broken heart. You leave different person." I smiled politely, wondering if I was that transparent or if he simply said this to all solo female travelers. Either way, I hoped he was right. The villa exceeded my expectations. Nestled at the edge of a ravine overlooking a river, it was small but exquisite, an indoor-outdoor living space with a plunge pool, a canopied bed draped in white mosquito netting, and a bathroom open to the sky where I could shower beneath the stars. The perfect antithesis to the Bahamas resort James was presumably discovering he'd be enjoying alone. "Welcome drink, Miss Emma," the villa host said, presenting a frosty pink concoction garnished with a frangipani flower. "I show you everything, then you rest, yes? Long journey for you." I sipped the sweet, tangy drink as she demonstrated how to work the air conditioning, where extra towels were kept, and how to call for room service. When she left, I stood in the center of the space, suddenly overwhelmed by silence and solitude. For the first time since executing my plan, I had nothing to do. No next steps to orchestrate, no facade to maintain. Just me, alone with the consequences of my choices and the wreckage of my relationship. I walked to the edge of my private pool and dipped my toes in the cool water. The jungle below rustled with unseen life. A distant temple bell sounded, the tone lingering in the humid air. I took a deep breath, then another. "Congratulations, Emma," I said aloud to no one. "You've successfully blown up your entire life." My laughter echoed oddly in the open-air room, sounding more like a sob than I'd intended. I slept for 14 hours, my body surrendering to jet lag and emotional exhaustion. When I woke, disoriented in the unfamiliar darkness, it took several minutes to remember where I was and why. The bedside clock read 3:17 a.m. In New York, it would be 3:17 p.m. the previous day. James would have been alone in the Bahamas for nearly a full day. The thought brought a complex mixture of satisfaction and guilt. I pushed it aside and padded to the bathroom, splashing cool water on my face. In the mirror, I looked like a stranger, hair mussed from sleep, eyes shadowed, expression uncertain. I made tea from the supplies on the minibar and took it outside to the small private terrace. The pre-dawn air was cooler, fresher. Stars punched holes in the black canopy above. A chorus of insects and distant roosters created a soundtrack entirely foreign to my city-trained ears. It was time. I couldn't avoid it any longer. I fetched my phone and, sitting cross-legged on a cushioned lounge chair, finally turned off airplane mode. The device immediately began to vibrate with incoming notifications, an angry electronic swarm that seemed to go on forever. When it finally stopped, I took a deep breath and looked at the screen. 57 missed calls, 123 text messages, 32 voicemails. Nearly all from James, with a sprinkling from Lily, Mike, and other friends. I started with Lily's texts. "Emma, James just called me freaking out saying you've disappeared. What's going on? He says you left him a note and took off? Is this part of your plan? Call me!" "Seriously, girl, I'm getting worried. Just let me know you're okay. James is losing his mind. He went to the airport but obviously couldn't find you. He keeps asking if I know where you are. I didn't tell him anything because I don't know anything. Please call me before I file a missing person report." The last message had come just 4 hours ago. I quickly typed a response. "I'm okay. Needed to disappear for a while. In a safe place. Will explain everything soon. Please don't worry and don't tell James anything." I moved on to Mike's messages, which were similarly concerned but less panicked. I sent him reassurance as well. Then, bracing myself, I opened James's texts. They started relatively calm. Emma, where are you? The Uber's here. Are you in the bathroom? I don't hear the shower. Then escalated rapidly. What the hell, Emma? I found your note. This isn't funny. Please call me. Whatever you're upset about, we can talk it through. You can't just disappear like this. We have a flight to catch. I'm at the airport. Where are you? The messages grew increasingly desperate. Emma, please. I'm begging you. Tell me where you are. I called your work. They said you took 2 weeks off. Where are you going? I called your parents. They haven't heard from you either. Everyone's worried. The most recent text had a darker tone. I can't believe you did this to me. Do you know how much money I spent on this trip? This is so fucking childish. You've made your point. Now call me back. I should have known you'd pull something like this. Rebecca would never be this immature. That last one made me laugh out loud, a harsh sound in the quiet pre-dawn. Of course he'd bring Rebecca into this. Of course he'd try to make me the villain. The voicemails followed a similar pattern: initial confusion, growing panic, anger, and finally bitter accusations. I deleted them all after listening just long enough to confirm they contained no new information. As the sky began to lighten, birds joining the insect chorus in enthusiastic harmony, I contemplated my next move. Part of me wanted to text James back, to twist the knife deeper, to make sure he understood exactly why I'd done what I did, but that would defeat the purpose of my disappearance. The whole point was to remove myself completely, to leave him alone with the consequences of his betrayal. Responding now would only give him what he wanted: access to me, a chance to shift the blame, an opportunity to make himself the victim. No, I decided. Complete silence was the better revenge. Let him wonder. Let him imagine me anywhere in the world, perhaps having the time of my life, perhaps with someone else. Let the uncertainty eat at him the way his betrayal had eaten at me. I put my phone away without responding to his messages. Instead, I watched the sun rise over the Balinese jungle, painting the sky in dramatic shades of pink and gold. A new day and a new place. The first day of my life without James. My first week in Bali passed in a blur of jet lag, cultural adjustment, and cautious exploration. I hired a driver to take me to temples and rice terraces. I wandered through the monkey forest, equal parts delighted and terrified by the bold macaques that snatched at water bottles and sunglasses. I browsed markets full of intricate handicrafts and bargained poorly for sarongs I didn't need. Through it all, I maintained radio silence with James. He continued to message and call several times a day, though with decreasing frequency as the days passed. I responded to Lily and a few other close friends, sharing minimal details about my location, but assuring them I was safe and needed space. He went to the Bahamas alone, Lily reported via text on my 4th day. He posted a passive-aggressive Instagram story of an empty beach chair captioned, "Thanks for nothing, Emma. Everyone's confused." I didn't respond to that particular update, unsure how to feel about it. On one hand, it was exactly what I'd wanted: James alone in the romantic resort he'd booked for us, forced to explain my absence to curious staff, sitting by himself at candle-lit dinners meant for two. On the other hand, his attempt to garner sympathy via social media made my skin crawl. On my 6th day in Ubud, I booked a session with a Balinese healer recommended by my villa host. I wasn't normally drawn to spiritual or alternative practices, but something about being thousands of miles from home made me more open to experiences I would have dismissed in New York. The healer, a tiny elderly woman named Wayan, with a face creased like crumpled silk, received me in a small compound where chickens wandered freely and incense burned in every corner. She spoke limited English, supplemented by a younger relative who translated her more complex statements. "You carry heavy pain," she said immediately, taking my hands in her small dry ones. "Here and here." She touched my chest and my head. I nodded, unexpectedly moved by the simple acknowledgement of my suffering. "Man pain," she continued confidently. "Not first time heartbroken for you?" That surprised me. "No, it is the first time, actually." Wayan shook her head, unconvinced. "Old pain there too. Different kind, but still man pain." Before I could question her further, she led me to a mat on the floor and instructed me to lie down. What followed was a combination of massage, energy work, and moments where she simply placed her hands on different parts of my body and hummed low, resonant tones. I tried to stay present, to be open to whatever healing she offered, but my mind kept wandering to James. What was he doing right now in the Bahamas? Had he found someone else to share his expensive villa with? Had he called Rebecca to join him? "Stop!" Wayan said sharply, tapping my forehead. "You thinking revenge thoughts?" Poison for you, not him. I blinked up at her, startled. How did you— Face tells everything. She interrupted. Revenge thoughts make ugly face. Make ugly spirit. You have beautiful spirit. Don't make ugly with revenge. The straightforward admonishment hit harder than any carefully worded therapy session back home could have. I felt tears well up, then spill over, tracking warm paths into my hair. Yes, cry, Wyan encouraged, her voice gentler now. Cry poison out. And so I did, lying on a mat in a stranger's compound in Bali, chickens clucking nearby, incense smoke curling around me. I finally allowed myself to fully feel the pain I'd been channeling into revenge plotting and travel logistics. The betrayal, the humiliation, the loss of the future I'd believed in, all of it crashed over me in waves that left me gasping. Wyan didn't try to stop my tears or offer platitudes. She simply continued her work, occasionally murmuring words in Balinese that I couldn't understand but somehow found comforting. When the session ended, I felt hollowed out but cleaner somehow, as if the worst of the poison had indeed been purged. Wyan gave me a small bottle of herbal medicine to take daily and firm instructions to return in 3 days. Revenge bad medicine? She said as I prepared to leave. Love good medicine even for broken heart. She pressed a hand to my chest. Find new love. Not man love yet. Self-love first. Then life love. Man love come when ready. I carried her words with me as I wandered slowly back to my villa, feeling wrung out but somehow lighter. Was she right? Had my elaborate revenge scheme been poisoning me as much as James? The satisfaction I'd felt at the airport seemed distant now, tainted by the knowledge that I'd invested so much energy in causing pain rather than healing my own. Back at the villa, I found myself reaching for my phone, scrolling to James's contact information. For a brief, mad moment, I considered calling him, telling him where I was, trying to explain the storm of hurt and rage that had driven me to such extreme measures. Instead, I put the phone down and walked to the edge of my plunge pool. The late afternoon sun cast golden light across the water. Below, the river rushed through the ravine, endlessly moving yet somehow always the same. I stripped off my clothes and slipped into the cool water, letting it close over my head, holding my breath until my lungs burned, then surfacing with a gasp. Floating on my back, staring at the deepening blue sky, I made a decision. The revenge had been executed. It couldn't be undone, but I could choose what happened next. I could choose to keep feeding the anger, the hurt, the desire to make James suffer, or I could choose to focus on healing myself. Wyan was right. Revenge was bad medicine, and I'd had enough. That night, I took out my journal and wrote a letter to James that I knew I would never send. James, by now, you're halfway through your solo stay in the Bahamas. I've imagined you there 100 times, alone on the beach, drinking by yourself at the resort bar, trying to explain to curious staff why you're experiencing a romantic getaway without your girlfriend. I've imagined your humiliation, your anger, your confusion. And I want to confess something. Orchestrating this scenario gave me a deep, visceral satisfaction. When I saw that Instagram post of you and Rebecca on Valentine's Day, something broke in me. Not just my heart, but my sense of reality. The James I thought I knew would never have betrayed me like that. The life I thought we were building together crumbled in an instant. I felt like a fool for trusting you, for loving you, for building my future around you. The revenge plan came from that broken place. I wanted you to feel even a fraction of the pain and humiliation I felt. I wanted to take something you valued, money, time, pride, just as you had taken something invaluable from me. But sitting here in Bali, thousands of miles from you, I'm realizing that revenge hasn't healed me. It hasn't undone your betrayal. It's just kept me tethered to the pain, oriented around you instead of myself. So I'm letting it go. Not for your sake, but for mine. I don't forgive you. Not yet, maybe not ever. But I'm choosing to stop investing in your suffering. I'm choosing to invest in my healing instead. I won't contact you again, and I ask that you respect my decision to move forward separately. The revenge vacation was my final statement on our relationship. I have nothing more to say. Goodbye, James. I closed the journal without rereading what I'd written. The words weren't meant for James. They were meant for me. A release, an acknowledgement, a line drawn between the person I had been, so consumed by hurt that revenge seemed like the only path forward, and the person I wanted to become. The next morning, I checked out of my villa in Ubud and took a car to the coast. I'd booked the second week of my Bali trip at a small beachfront hotel in Ahmed, a quiet area known for its black sand beaches and spectacular diving. As the landscape changed from lush jungle to coastal views, I felt the first genuine stirring of excitement since arriving on the island. My beachfront bungalow was simpler than the Ubud villa, but charming in its own way. Whitewashed walls, a ceiling fan that stirred the sea-scented air, and a porch with 2 rattan chairs facing the water. I unpacked my few belongings, changed into a swimsuit, and walked the 20 steps to the ocean. The water was bathwater warm, clear as glass. Fish darted around my ankles as I waded in, small flashes of electric blue and yellow. I dove beneath the surface, the silence of underwater enveloping me like a cocoon, and for a suspended moment, I thought of nothing at all. Not James, not revenge, not heartbreak. Just the sensation of floating, of weightlessness, of being held by something vast and ancient and utterly indifferent to human drama. When I surfaced, I felt like I'd crossed some invisible threshold. The second week of my Bali escape would be different from the first. Less about running away, more about moving toward something new. That evening, as I sat on my porch watching the sunset paint the sky in impossible colors, my phone buzzed with a text from Lily. "James is back from the Bahamas. He's telling everyone you had a mental breakdown and abandoned him. People are worried, Emma. Can I at least tell them you're okay?" The message sent a jolt of anger through me. Mental breakdown? He was spinning my calculated revenge as a symptom of instability. For a moment, the progress I thought I'd made felt like an illusion. I wanted to call him, to expose his lies, to tell everyone exactly what he'd done and why I'd left. I took a deep breath, watching the last sliver of sun disappear into the horizon. That path led backward, not forward. James's attempts to control the narrative were predictable, even pathetic. Engaging would only entangle me in his web again. "You can tell people I'm fine," I wrote back to Lily, taking some time away for myself. "Nothing to worry about. I'll be back in a week." Then, after a moment's thought, I added, "And if anyone asks, you can tell them the truth. James cheated, I found out, I left." "It's that simple." Lily's response came quickly. "Already done. Don't worry, Team Emma all the way. Take care of yourself out there." I smiled, grateful for her loyalty, then set my phone aside to fully appreciate the stars emerging above the dark water. The night sky in Bali was unlike anything I'd seen before. Stars so numerous and brilliant they seemed like scattered diamond dust, the Milky Way a visible, cloudy river flowing across the blackness. I'd been in Ahmed for 3 days when I met Alex. He was staying at the same small hotel, a solo traveler from Australia who'd been in Bali for nearly a month. We struck up a conversation over breakfast, casual observations about the food, the weather, the stray dogs that patrolled the beach looking for handouts. "First time in Bali?" he asked, pouring me a refill of coffee from the shared pot. "Is it that obvious?" I laughed. "You have that look, part overwhelmed, part enchanted." His smile was easy, lacking the practiced charm I'd grown wary of. "I had it too my first week here. And now? Now I'm just enchanted." He gestured toward the beach, where early morning fishermen were bringing in their boats. How could anyone get used to this? We ended up spending the day together, first snorkeling directly off the beach, then hiring a local guide to take us to a nearby shipwreck for diving. Alex was an experienced diver who helped me through my initial nervousness, staying close as we descended into the blue world where a World War II Japanese patrol boat lay encrusted with coral, now home to a riot of marine life. Underwater, communication reduced to hand signals and eye contact, I felt a surprising connection with this stranger. There was something pure about relating without words, about sharing the wonder of schools of fish swirling around us like living confetti, about pointing out a sea turtle gliding majestically past. Back on the surface, we talked more freely. Alex was 34, an environmental engineer taking a sabbatical after completing a major project. He was thoughtful, asking questions about my life in New York, but never pushing when I kept details vague. "Running away from something or toward something?" he asked as we sat on the beach that evening, sharing a bottle of local beer. I raised an eyebrow. "Is it that obvious?" "Most solo travelers fall into one of those categories," he said with a shrug. "Or both." "Both, I think," I admitted, though it started more as running away. He nodded, not asking for details I wasn't ready to share. "The good news is, the longer you're away, the more it becomes about running toward something. At least that's been my experience." We spent the next few days exploring together, a sunrise hike up Mount Batur, a visit to a traditional salt farm, lazy afternoons reading in hammocks strung between palm trees. It wasn't romantic exactly, but there was an ease between us that I hadn't experienced in a long time, maybe ever. No expectations, no need to impress, just two humans sharing space and conversation in a beautiful corner of the world. On my fifth night in Ahmed, Alex and I joined a beach barbecue hosted by our hotel. Under strings of lights, seated at low tables in the sand, we feasted on grilled fish and tropical fruits, while local musicians played traditional instruments. The air was perfumed with frangipani and smoke from the cooking fires, the music punctuated by the rhythmic washing of waves on the shore. "I've been thinking about extending my stay," Alex mentioned casually, reaching for another piece of fish. "Bali has a way of making you reconsider your plans. How long were you planning to stay originally?" 6 weeks. But now I'm thinking maybe 2 months. Or longer. He looked out at the dark water, reflective. "There's something about this place that makes the rest of the world seem very far away and not particularly urgent." I knew exactly what he meant. Even after just 10 days, New York felt like a distant memory, a life I'd lived in some previous incarnation. The problems that had consumed me there, James's betrayal, my elaborate revenge, the wreckage of my 3-year relationship, seemed to belong to someone else. "What about you?" Alex asked. "When do you head back?" "I have a flight in 4 days," I said, surprised at the pang of regret I felt. "Back to reality, I guess." "Reality is overrated," he said with a grin. "This could be reality too, you know. At least for a little while longer." The suggestion hung in the air between us. Not quite an invitation, but not quite not one either. I thought about it, about extending my stay, about allowing this unexpected detour to become something more substantial, about what might happen between Alex and me in that expanded time frame. But I also thought about running away versus running toward, about the life that was waiting for me in New York, the loose ends I'd left dangling, the healing I still needed to do on my own terms, not on a perpetual vacation. "I think I need to go back," I said finally. "There are things I need to face." Alex nodded, understanding without offense. "The offer stands, though. If you change your mind or if you ever want to come back, I'll remember that." Later that night, alone in my bungalow, I took out my phone for the first time in days. A new message from Lily awaited me. "James showed up at my apartment tonight, drunk and crying. He wanted to know where you are." I didn't tell him, but he's a mess, Emma. Not that you should care after what he did. Just thought you should know. I stared at the message, waiting for the surge of vindication I would have felt a week ago. Instead, I felt a complex mixture of emotions, a twinge of residual pain, yes, but also a kind of distant pity. James's suffering no longer felt like my victory. It just felt sad, a predictable consequence of his own actions. "Thanks for not telling him," I wrote back. "I'll be home soon. We can talk then." I set the phone aside and stepped out onto my porch. The night was alive with sound, waves, insects, distant music from somewhere down the beach. I breathed in the salt air, trying to memorize the feeling of this place, this moment. 4 more days in paradise, then back to New York to rebuild my life. Not running away anymore, but running toward whatever came next. My last days in Bali passed too quickly, filled with final experiences I wanted to cram in before leaving. A traditional cooking class, a visit to a water temple, one last long dive along a coral wall teeming with life. Alex and I continued our easy friendship, though there was a new undercurrent of awareness that our time together was drawing to a close. "Last night," he said as we walked along the beach on my final evening. "Any regrets about leaving?" I considered the question carefully. No regrets. But I'll miss this place. It gave me exactly what I needed, even though I didn't know what that was when I arrived. "That's Bali for you?" he said, smiling. "Magical like that." We stopped walking, turning to face the sunset blazing across the water. On impulse, I reached for his hand. "Thank you," I said simply. "For what?" "For being part of this. For not asking too many questions. For showing me it's possible to connect with someone without—" I hesitated, searching for the right words. "Without all the bullshit?" he suggested. I laughed. "Yeah, exactly. Without all the bullshit." He squeezed my hand once, then let it go. "Safe travels, Emma. I hope you find what you're running toward." The journey back to New York was long and disorienting, a 24-hour ordeal of flights and layovers that left me jet-lagged and existentially fuzzy. When I finally unlocked the door to my apartment, it was almost shocking how unchanged everything was. The same furniture, the same view from my windows, the same collection of mugs in my kitchen cabinet. I'd been gone for only 2 weeks, but it felt like years had passed. I was not the same Emma who had slipped out of this apartment in the pre-dawn darkness, leaving a sleeping James and a vindictive note behind. After showering away the travel grime, I faced the inevitable, turning my phone back onto full connectivity, no longer insulated by distance and limited international service. The notifications rolled in immediately, though fewer than I'd expected. It seemed the world had continued spinning quite nicely without my active participation. Lily had texted 5 minutes earlier, clearly having been notified of my return by our shared location app. "You're back! Come over for dinner tonight? I want to hear everything." I smiled, grateful for her unquestioning friendship. Exhausted from travel, but yes. 7 p.m.? We'll bring wine. Then, steeling myself, I scrolled through the other messages. Most were mundane, work colleagues asking about my vacation, a reminder about an upcoming dentist appointment, promotional emails from brands I needed to unsubscribe from. And then, from 3 days ago, a message from James. "I know you probably won't read this, but I need to say it anyway. I'm sorry, Emma. Not just for Valentine's Day, but for everything after. For lying, for trying to manipulate you, for making you out to be crazy when you left. I was hurt and embarrassed and I handled it terribly. I understand why you did what you did. I deserved it. I just hope someday you might be willing to talk. I miss you." I read the message twice, searching for my reaction. 2 weeks ago, his apology would have felt like victory. A week ago, it would have triggered anger at his presumption. Now I felt not much of anything. A vague sense of closure, perhaps. The knowledge that he understood finally what he had done. I didn't respond. Perhaps someday I would, when there was nothing left of the hurt, when we could speak as two people who had once loved each other, and now simply didn't. But that day wasn't today. Instead, I set my phone aside and walked to the window. New York stretched out before me, familiar and strange at once. The life I'd left behind was still here, waiting for me to step back into it. My job, my friends, my routines. But I was returning with something new, a perspective that 2 weeks in Bali had given me. I had run away from betrayal and heartbreak, using revenge as my vehicle. But I was returning towards something more important, myself, reconstituted. Not defined by a relationship or its ending. Not driven by hurt or anger. Just Emma, standing on her own, facing forward. The revenge vacation had served its purpose, but not in the way I'd originally intended. It hadn't been about making James suffer, though I couldn't deny a certain dark satisfaction in knowing that he had. It had been about breaking free, from him, from the relationship, from the person I'd become while loving someone who didn't deserve it. I opened my suitcase and began unpacking, placing the small souvenirs I'd brought back on my dresser, a carved wooden elephant, a pouch of coffee beans, a bracelet of volcanic stone beads that Alex had given me on my last day. Tangible reminders of the journey I'd taken, both external and internal. My phone buzzed with another text from Lily. "By the way, saw James at the coffee shop yesterday. He asked if you were back yet." I said no. "Hope that's okay?" I smiled, appreciating her loyalty, but realizing I no longer needed protection from the knowledge that James and I existed in the same city, might occasionally cross paths. "It's fine," I texted back. "I'm not hiding anymore." And I wasn't. Not from James, not from the pain of betrayal, not from the person I'd become in response to it, someone capable of calculated revenge, yes, but also someone capable of healing, of connecting, of moving forward. The revenge vacation hadn't fixed everything. The hurt hadn't magically disappeared. But it had served as a bridge, from betrayal to beginning again, from reaction to intention, from running away to running toward. As I finished unpacking, I came across the red dress I'd worn on Valentine's Day, carefully folded at the bottom of my suitcase. I'd brought it to Bali on some half-formed idea that I might burn it or throw it into the ocean, a dramatic gesture of release. Instead, I hung it in my closet. Not to wear again, its associations were still too painful for that, but as a reminder of how far I'd come from that day. The woman who had sat waiting in that dress, devastated by betrayal, was both me and not me. She was part of my story, but she wasn't my whole story. I closed the closet door and went to shower and change for dinner with Lily. There would be stories to tell, Bali to describe, emotions to process. There would be questions about James, about what happened next, about how I was really doing. And for the first time since Valentine's Day, I felt ready to answer those questions honestly. I was doing okay. I was healing. I was moving forward. The revenge vacation had served its purpose. But the real journey, the one toward becoming the person I wanted to be after heartbreak, was just beginning. That evening, over wine and takeout in Lily's apartment, I told her everything. The elaborate plan, the Bali escape, the healing that had unexpectedly occurred. "So you're really over him?" she asked, refilling our glasses. "Just like that?" "Not just like that," I corrected. "And not completely over him, no. I still get angry when I think about what he did. I still feel hurt, but I'm not consumed by it anymore. It doesn't define me." Lily shook her head, amazed. "You're my hero, you know that? Most people just key their ex's car or burn their clothes. You orchestrated an international revenge plot and then had a spiritual awakening in Bali. Who even are you?" I laughed, recognizing the absurdity of it all. "I'm still figuring that out, actually. And this Alex guy? Is he coming to visit? Are you going back to Bali?" "No plans either way," I said honestly. "He was the right person at the right time. A connection without expectation. But I'm not looking to replace one relationship with another right now." Lily nodded, understanding. "Well, I'm glad you're back. And I'm glad you're, I don't know, at peace with everything? Is that the right way to put it?" "Getting there," I said. "One day at a time." The weeks that followed my return to New York were an exercise in recalibration. I resumed my job, reconnected with friends, re-established routines. But small things had changed. I started a meditation practice, influenced by my time in Bali. I took a weekend ceramic class, something I'd always wanted to try but never made time for while with James. I redecorated my apartment, removing the last traces of his presence. I ran into him once, about a month after my return. It was bound to happen in a city that could feel surprisingly small despite its size. I was leaving a restaurant with coworkers when I spotted him across the street, waiting at a crosswalk. He saw me at the same moment, his step faltering, his expression freezing in surprise. For a suspended moment, we stared at each other across the distance. Then, acting on instinct rather than calculation, I raised my hand in a small wave. He returned the gesture hesitantly, before the light changed and pedestrians surged forward, breaking our line of sight. I continued walking with my colleagues, my heart beating slightly faster but otherwise unaffected. It was strange to see him, like encountering a character from a book I'd read long ago, familiar yet unreal. "Was that?" one of my coworkers started to ask. "Yes," I said simply. "It's fine." And it was fine. Not comfortable, not pleasant, but fine. A brief intersection of separate paths that no longer ran parallel. Later that night, alone in my apartment, I received a text from James. "It was strange seeing you today. You looked well. I hope you are." I stared at the message, considering whether to respond. In the end, I decided there was no harm in basic civility. "I am well, thank you." "I hope the same for you." His reply came quickly. "I am. Better than I deserve, probably. The Bahamas was brutal, by the way. Just so you know, your plan worked." I smiled despite myself, a small acknowledgement of the strange journey we'd both taken since Valentine's Day. "It wasn't about making you suffer?" I wrote back, surprising myself with the honesty. "Not in the end, anyway." "What was it about, then?" I thought about that for a moment, trying to articulate something I was still coming to understand myself. "Freedom," I finally replied. It was about being free. There was a long pause before his response appeared. "I think I understand. For what it's worth, I'm sorry for everything." "Truly, I believe you." I wrote and realized I meant it. "Goodbye, James." "Goodbye, Emma." I set my phone down, feeling a curious sense of lightness. Not the vindictive satisfaction I'd felt at the airport 2 months ago, but something cleaner, more complete. An ending without bitterness. A door closed gently rather than slammed. That night I dreamed of Bali, of clear blue water and black sand beaches, of temple bells and fragrant flowers, of Alex's easy smile and Wyan's knowing eyes. I woke with the scent of frangipani in my nose and a sense of presence I hadn't felt in a long time. I made coffee and carried it to my small balcony, watching the city wake up around me. New York in summer was a far cry from a Balinese beach, but it had its own rhythms, its own beauty. This was my home, my reality. Not an escape, not a revenge plot, but the life I was choosing to build. The revenge vacation had served its purpose. Now it was time for the next journey, one without maps or itineraries, one day at a time, one step forward and then another. I raised my coffee cup in a silent toast to whatever came next, ready at last to find out.